Sister, wife, please my mother drop your knife. It can result to a loss of a life. Do not violate a right. Oh, my daddy is a right. Do not force that to a knife.
Good day, viewers and listeners. My name is Mariama Jom. I am happy to welcome you to our virtual learning class on gender-based violence. This program is brought to you by the Network Against Gender-Based Violence in partnership with ActionAid International, The Gambia, with funding from Amplify Change. Class 9 will be presented by Mr. Lamin Fati, who will take us through child abuse and its consequences.
Good day, wonderful listeners and viewers. Here with you today is Lamin Fati, National Coordinator for the Child Protection Alliance. I'm going to take you through child abuse discussion. Now I'm going to start with the definition of who is a child. A child is said to be anyone who is below the age of 18, as per the Children Act 2005 amended in 2016. But this is not only specific to the Children Act, but in relation to other regional or international legal instruments that Gambia has ratified, namely the United Convention on the Right of the Child, which Gambia has ratified in 1990. Also, too, we have at the regional level the African Charter on the Right and Welfare of the Child, which Gambia has also ratified in 2000. So as a result, the definition of a child is consistent from the national, regional, and international level, that a child is anyone who is below the age of 18 legally. So because my presentation is going to look around the issue of child abuse, so it is important that we give a definition of what do we term as child abuse. So child abuse is defined as a maltreatment which includes all forms of physical, emotional ill-treatment, sexual abuse, neglect, or commercial or other exploitation of children, which result to actual or potential harm to the child's health, survival, development, and dignity in the context of relationship of responsibility, trust, or power. This is defined by the World Health Organization. Right, but also too, there's another definition which we have in our Children Act legally that's indicated that any act that contravenes the right of children as enshrined in the Children Act 2005 could be tantamount to as child abuse. So we want to know also too the classifications of abuse. When we talk about classification, I'm not talking about the forms of abuse. So I'll start with the first one, which we're now looking at as what? Physical abuse. So physical abuse could be the use of intentional physical force to cause physical harm or to discomfort the child, and this could include slapping, hitting the child. Sometimes we have seen where children their hands or they have been burned simply because they have misbehaved in a manner. So this could be tantamount to as what we call physical abuse. You slap the child, or you could use cane or belt to hit the child. Sometimes too, you can take something to also throw at the child. We have also seen another form where children are asked to kneel, have their kneel down on top of stones, and then they carry stones. These are all forms of what we call physical abuse. Also too, this other part we call emotional or psychological abuse, which actually refers to any behavior that is harmful to the child's self-worth, and also too, it can affect the child's emotional well-being. And such would be where we use certain remarks that could be so degrading to the child. For example, we have seen where you will call the child a trash piece of cloth, or sometimes in our local setting you will hear when Mandinkas will say, "Itata so fala or Mandinka." The Wolof would say, "You don't musa take it, don't def dara." So basically, some of these things will have some psychological impact on the child, even with adults. We have seen adults that goes throughout their life, but they always have something to remember as a result of something that has been said to them, either by their parents, by their teacher, or by their loved ones. Also, too, we have what we call sexual abuse. Sexual abuse is kind of like, it involves the forcing or the engagement of a child into sexual act. Sexual act in the sense could be looking at, you could look at two dimensions. It could be, right, where a person engaged in a sexual relation or sexual act with a child. Also too, it might also involve where the perpetrator or an elderly person will engage the child into sexual activities, sexual related activities, such as touching the private, allowing the child to touch his or her private parts, or the other way around, where you play with the private organs or parts of the child. Sometimes we have scenarios where a child is being exposed to watching pornographic and all this stuff. So these are elements of what, where you actually engage the child into some form of sexual abuse. The last on the forms of abuse is neglect. Neglect could be as a result of failing to meet the basic physical needs and emotional needs of the particular child. For example, when you talk about basic needs, basic physical or emotional needs, you're now looking at what? What are these basic needs? You want to talk about shelter, you want to talk about clothing, you want to talk about feeding, you want to talk about education, and as well as what? You want to talk about having medical attention. So in failure to meet this actually would tantamount to neglect. So we said also too, who can abuse a child? Right? Most often, some of these abuse cases that have been reported, most of the time are actually being done by people who the child must have known and trusted in them. Right? And this could range from relatives, and when we talk about relatives, could be the uncles, could be the father, could be the siblings. Of recent, we have seen publication or stories in the media where fathers has been accused of impregnating their own child. Also too, we also have seen scenarios where teachers also would use their position of influence, because they spend most of the time also with kids. As a result of that, they build trust on them, and teachers could as well be in a position where they could use their position of trust to as well abuse children, whether it's sexually or any engaging them into all kind of jobs. We talked about also neighbors. We have seen incidents where also neighbors will actually take the proximity between them and the child, and that is an easy accessibility to the child to as well use that to also abuse children. We also have incidents where babysitters can expose children to some kind of abuses. We have seen some time ago where you have videos where a babysitter was kicking, stamping on the child because the child at one point misbehaved. Also too, it's important to also note that strangers can as well abuse children. So we need to be very careful, especially young children. Do not be open to strangers at all times. Do not even visit strangers where there is no one. Just take a note. Now we want to look at who are these special categories of children who are extremely vulnerable. Right? Yes, abuse affects every child. But in every situation, you must be able to have the people or the children who are mostly affected by this act of abuse. And who are those in the list? We have children with disability. And when we talk about these children of disability, these are children that might not have everything intact, whether they have some disability in terms of what their physical being or mentally. Also, too, we talk about children living in poverty. Well, this is a country where at least 65% plus are living absolutely under the poverty line. So as a result, you now realize that the level of children being exposed to poverty is quite high. And this is where we see children being exposed to all form of labor or sexual exploitation or any form of exploitation. As a result of being poverty, you have children still selling on the street, children begging on the street, which actually is a fundamental violation of their right, because the law says no child shall be selling on the street, no child should be begging on the street, or should even accompany any person who is in the form of doing that. But because of poverty, all of these things are manifesting. So we also have what we call children living on the street. Yes, we have, this is one of the most challenging or daunting challenges that we are having in the area of child protection. We have seen children who might not be of Gambian national, but because they have been sent down to some of this Islamic education, at one point some of them actually will run away and wouldn't have anyone to accommodate them. But you have seen them sleeping at the car parks, mechanics, and all stuff. So these are 8 things to also do that expose this category of people, young children, to be very vulnerable. Yes, of recent we have seen also too a very high rate in children in conflict with the law. If a person is in conflict with the law, obviously there's a very high tendency that this particular person could as well be very vulnerable in terms of abuse. Yes, we have also the issues of orphan children who actually by natural circumstances, they lost both parents. Most of them would either be living with their aunties or with an extended family, or would even be taken to other places for for upbringing. We have seen a lot of issues also that, well, this set of people or children also could be very vulnerable to abuse. We have children living in dysfunctional families. Dysfunctional families where we know, well, sometimes you have family that you have a lot of disarray, families are not united, or the father and the mother are not united in the same line, and every now and then you have all these things happening. For example, when the mother and the father have some problems, some of these issues actually, you realize that the child is subjected to some kind of abuse. So we also want to look at, because, well, we all know that currently the world is fighting a battle. The world is faced with a challenge that we must be able to fight against, which is the COVID-19. And the COVID-19 pandemic also comes with a lot of restriction. Now what we're talking about is the lockdown, when government has to announce state of emergency, having everyone to be indoors, having to scale down all activities, whether it's in the public domain, whether it's in our private homes whatsoever, but activities are being scaled down, and as a result, what everybody needs to be indoors, unless and until you have something very essential to take care of. And essentiality in the sense that needs to be very important. So we said, what could this lockdown can also lead to what we call stress. And obviously, the pandemic affects everybody, no doubt, whether you are old, whether you are young, whether you are a woman, whether you are a man, but it affects children the most. But also too, you realize children also, the parents in the house should have a primary responsibility. If those people have been restricted, it could give back to what we call somehow could serve as a stressor that could able to affect their mental well-being. Equally as well too, we have seen children who couldn't go out, and maybe they have been used to routine activities like when they go to school, what they are exposed to, and also because those activities are restricted, it can as well serve some little bit element of stress on young kids, and this mentally could actually affect their mental well-being. We also want to talk about the inability to provide the needs of children. Obviously, when your activities are scaled down, and your daily income has been actually sliced down, or if it's not even forthcoming, so the basic demands of your children becomes a difficulty. And then we have seen all these things happening. As a result, well, this advocacy continue to say, you need to help the most vulnerable so that they are able to take care of some of these basic needs for children. The inability to cope with the demands and the rhymes of children, especially little ones. Yes, we all know, right? Children wouldn't have an understanding as to what context we are currently. So they think life should be continuously normal. Going to school serves a lot for them. Maybe when they go to school, they are exposed to other activities other than being in the classroom, right? And sometimes too, the privileged one will want to have their kids taking them to recreational facilities or centers, right? But because of this lockdown, all those facilities, all those swimming pool and game places have been locked down, right? And then they will want to continuously making demand when parents might not have any alternative to take care of that, right? I can say my child, when I call him anytime, he will say, Daddy, QCT. The only coping mechanism I have for him is to put him in the car, drive him 15, 20 minutes, he falls asleep, and then I bring him back. So we also said what the incident of domestic and intimate partner violence may increase and will have a severe impact on children's psychological well-being. Obviously, yes. When a child is being exposed to an abusive environment, or an environment that is violent, obviously the child will have some element of what psychological impact. For example, we have seen scenarios where a child had gone to school, right? But he was one of the lovely child in the classroom. He was always on the move. But this particular day, he was calm, right? When the teacher tried to engage him, before the interrogation, he cried. When the teacher asked what happened, he said, when I was leaving the house, my father said he's going to kill my mother. So before I get home, I know I will find my mother dead. So these are some of the things that the child can as well be exposed to. So the COVID-19 will also likely have disproportionate adverse impact on children, including girls, children with disability, children living on the street, and children in care institutions, as I have alluded earlier on. But it is also important, as much as we talk about issues of abuse, it's important that we are able to also inform the audience and the listeners that, well, when there are issues of child abuse, the channel of report that you could use to report these cases. At the village level, you could report the matter to the alcalo, to the VCD, to the chief. We have also had structures in the communities that we call the child protection committees. These are also organized structures within the community that could also able to receive this complaint and then will forward it to the relevant authorities. You can as well report to the nearest police station. And you need to be informed that in every police station, we have what we call a child welfare officer who is always there to make sure that issues of children have been reported to, and then they will be able to take the appropriate action. Also, too, we have the Department of Social Welfare, a department that has been designated with the responsibility of taking the issues of children, and particularly with the issues of our social welfare as a country. Child Protection Alliance, where I work also, is an NGO that is also there to promote and preserve the fundamental right of children. So you can as well report there, and then we're able to take relate with the relevant authorities. Likewise, we have the Network Against Gender-Based Violence. Right? This is particularly, we all know this is a network that is there, and it's geared towards what? Addressing the issues of women, particularly the girl child, to make sure that they create an atmosphere, an environment that is free from all forms of violence. So when you have violence in the homes against women, or girls, you can easily reach out to the Network Against Gender-Based Violence. Also too, you can contact the hotline at 199, and do not wait for it to happen. When you suspect of child abuse, you could reach out to the hotline 199. So, but nonetheless, we still have issues that we think that these are challenges in trying to promote that conducive environment for children to be free from abuses, right? And some of these challenges would be misconception about children, right? Obviously, sometimes it's totally disheartening when you hear people talk about, the issue of child right is there to kind of spoil. But let's be mindful that nobody gives a right. All that we do, all rights have been given by the Almighty. All this right that we're talking about is about a protection of those fundamental rights that is given to all, naturally by the Almighty. So we also have tradition and custom which endanger child abuse. Yes, because when you even look at the way, socially we are constructed, we feel that there are certain things that girls should be doing, and there are certain things that boys should not be doing. And as a result of that, because of all this misconception around within our tradition or custom, we have been seeing particularly the girl child, being exposed to a lot of abuses such as early marriage and all sort of FGMC and all not. Right? We also want to look at as a resource of why we can still make a lot of impact. We still have what we call secrecy, stigma, shame, and fear, especially when the case involves child abuse. Yes, the family where the particular girl child come from, the family has some element of the shame, the stigma that they don't want it to be associated with the family. Also, too, this has created a room where the child as a victim, right, becomes been more exposed to further injustice by the family themselves. So basically, these are some of the challenges that we look at. Also too, at our community level, we feel still now there is the denial by the community, family and victims in sexual abuse. Sometimes because the nature of our settings and everything, we don't create that conducive environment where we will build that much trust as to what the particular child say. Sometimes even because of that, when a child comes out to say the truth, we have seen instances where the child has been punished because simply for saying the truth. So these are some of the things, and most of the time when we talk about issues of child abuse, because as I have alluded earlier, that some of these abuses are conducted by people that are very close to the family or could be relatives. So the people that are involved, the child wouldn't come out to say, well, my uncle have raped me, because the family will obviously not believe in that story. So we have the culture of silence. As a result of all this misconception, not able to open that communication challenge where the child would freely report as to these issues. As a result, some of these things would happen and no one would report. Also, too, we have this Maslow syndrome, or sometimes you would tell, somebody would tell you, but I don't want to report this, because if I report this case, obviously, they would say, Lamin Fati has reported this case. So we also would want to say, I don't want to get myself associated because I'll now be accused. But unfortunately, too, this is a society whereby we celebrate perpetrators and further victimized victims. So points to note that abuse against children are manifestation of our system failure to protect those who are most defenseless. Obviously, as I said, in terms of protection, or in terms of protection mechanism, the state as the primary duty bearer has actually taken the commitment and the obligation that the children's right would be, the right of the child must be protected, must be respected, and must be fulfilled. And as a result of that, they have put laws that actually they are to to serve that protective environment. But we have seen where those laws and mechanisms are not too robust, children are still being exposed to further abuses. So that's an indication that, well, we have a system failure. Also, to abuse and violence can exert cumulative tool upon society, social and economical development. Obviously, yes, right? In terms of even trying to address some of these norms, some of these abuses against children involves a lot of resources in terms of finance, in terms of human resource, in terms of all technical needs or assistance as well, will take also a lot to also bear. Also, too, we need to understand that all people have the right to live in an environment to ensure protection. Always remember to protect children by observing the WHO COVID guidelines. We all know the guidelines: social distancing, wash your hands, avoid getting into crowd places, always get children indoors, don't expose them to the markets, don't expose them to go and sell on the street or begging. Something we need to also cater for the children. Also, too, if you suspect any case or cases of COVID, please call 1025. The emergency line is 1025. Also, too, the hotline is always on. You can call 199 for any suspected case or cases of child abuse. Failure to report child abuse cases, you are as equally guilty as the perpetrator. This is what I have for you today. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Dear viewers and listeners, my name is Jankoba Jabi, Director, Department of Social Welfare. During this difficult time of COVID-19, we should be each other's keepers, particularly when it comes to child protection. We should not be silent when a child is being subjected to any kind of abuse. Instead, we should report any suspected child abuse case to the police or Department of Social Welfare. Together, we can protect our children from abuse and communities from COVID-19 by reporting suspected cases of child abuse to the hotline 199 and suspected cases of COVID-19 to the hotline 1025. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
She's a sister, she's a wife. Please, my mother, drop your knife. It can result to a loss of a life. Do not violate a right. Oh, my daddy is a right. Do not force her to annihilate my way.